My beloved child, stop scrolling for a moment, because what you are about to hear enters a place in your story that you have been afraid to look at. Something has been hidden behind the silence of the person you once trusted with the most fragile parts of your heart. And tonight, the veil begins to move. Do not be frightened by the darkness of the words. This is not a message telling you to fear your soulmate. This is a fictional spiritual story about a secret, a conscience, a wound, and a truth that has been buried so deeply that even the person carrying it has convinced themselves it no longer exists. But heaven sees what people hide from themselves. And there is something your soulmate has never been able to completely erase. A moment, a choice, a terrible decision made under emotional pressure, a decision they have carried like a stone beneath their ribs. You thought the distance between you happened because love disappeared. You thought perhaps they changed, perhaps they became colder, perhaps someone else entered their life. Perhaps circumstances simply destroyed what once felt sacred, but what if that was only the surface? What if the real story was never about love disappearing? What if it was about something your soulmate did after fear entered their heart? Pause here, my beloved child, because there is a reason this particular message found you. You have felt something unfinished. You have sensed that there was more behind their silence. You have noticed moments when their eyes seemed to carry an apology they could not speak. You have wondered why they sometimes appeared emotionally overwhelmed by memories that should have been forgotten. You may have asked yourself why a person who supposedly moved on could still look haunted by the past. And perhaps the strangest part has been this: they never seemed completely free. Even when they smiled, something was missing. Even when they acted confident, there was a shadow behind the confidence. Even when they told themselves that everything was fine, some private place inside them continued whispering the same question. What have I done? That question has followed them, not because they are condemned, not because they are beyond forgiveness, but because there are choices the human heart cannot easily bury, and the secret they are hiding is connected to the word killed. Not necessarily a literal death. Listen carefully. The truth is more symbolic, more emotional, and more painful than the simple story your mind may create. Your soulmate believes they killed something precious. They believe they killed your trust. They believe they killed the future you might have had together. They believe they killed the version of you that once believed they were safe. And there is one possibility they have never been able to face. They may believe that their decision killed the love between you. That is the sinful truth buried beneath their silence. They did something they knew was wrong. They crossed a line they promised themselves they would never cross. Perhaps they lied. Perhaps they manipulated a situation. Perhaps they allowed another person to influence them. Perhaps they betrayed something you trusted them with. Perhaps they chose pride when humility was required. Perhaps they walked away when they should have fought for clarity, and then they watched the consequences unfold. That is where the guilt began. At first, they told themselves they had no choice. That is what people often do when they are afraid of their own decisions. They build explanations around them. I had to. It was for the best. There was no other way. I was protecting myself. I was protecting them. But explanations can become prisons when the heart knows they are incomplete, and your soulmate eventually discovered that the story they told everyone else could not silence the story they told themselves at night. There were moments when they remembered you, not the way others remember an old relationship. They remembered details, the sound of your voice, a particular expression on your face. A conversation that ended differently than it should have, a moment when you trusted them. A moment when you asked them to be honest. And they remember what they did next. That memory has become their secret courtroom. Nobody else has to accuse them, their own conscience does it, and that is why they would rather avoid the truth than admit what happened. Because admitting it means they cannot blame circumstances anymore. They cannot blame timing. They cannot blame family. They cannot blame distance. They cannot blame you. They would have to look at themselves, and that is terrifying. My beloved child, there is something you must understand before the next layer of this story is revealed. Guilt and repentance are not the same thing. A person can feel guilty and still hide. A person can regret something and still refuse accountability. A person can miss you desperately and still remain silent because telling the truth would force them to confront the consequences. That may be where your soulmate is now, caught between regret and confession. They remember what they did. They know what they did changed something, but they are afraid that if they tell you everything, you will finally understand why they disappeared, and they are even more afraid that once you understand, you may never look at them the same way again. This is why they may have chosen silence, not because they have nothing to say, because they have too much to say. There are words sitting behind their teeth that have been waiting for the right moment. I lied. I knew. I should have told you. I was afraid. I made the wrong choice. I thought I was protecting myself. I didn't realize what I was destroying. And perhaps the most painful sentence of all, I watched you suffer because of something I did. That sentence is the one they cannot easily speak, because once it is spoken, there is no going back to pretending, so they remain quiet, they change the subject, they avoid certain places, they avoid certain songs, they avoid old photographs. They avoid conversations about you. They may even avoid people who knew both of you because those people carry memories that threaten the version of the story your soulmate has built. But memories do not disappear simply because people stop talking about them. They wait, and sometimes they return at the exact moment a person believes they have finally escaped. That moment may already have arrived. Something recently reminded your soulmate of what they did. Perhaps a familiar place. Perhaps an old message. Perhaps your name appearing unexpectedly. Perhaps someone asking an innocent question. Whatever it was. It opened the locked room, and inside that room was the truth. Your soulmate did not simply lose you. In their own mind, they believe they caused the loss. That distinction is enormous, because when someone believes another person left them, they can become angry. But when someone believes they are responsible for losing the person they loved, anger often turns inward. They begin asking questions nobody else can answer. What if I had told the truth? What if I had trusted them? What if I had ignored that advice? What if I had stayed? What if I had called? What if I had apologized before it was too late? And eventually, one question becomes unbearable. What if they would still be here if I had made one different choice? That question has been haunting them, but there is something even deeper. They may have believed that you hated them, and perhaps that belief made it easier to stay away, because if they could convince themselves that you wanted nothing to do with them, then they did not have to face the possibility that you were waiting for an explanation. They may have told themselves you had moved on. They may have imagined that you found someone else. They may have assumed you had forgotten. But deep inside, they knew they had never given you the complete truth, and that knowledge kept the door from ever fully closing. You see, my child, sometimes a person does not return because they have stopped loving you. Sometimes they stay away because they are ashamed of the person they became when they lost you. That is a different kind of distance. It is not empty. It is heavy. It contains regret. It contains fear. It contains memories. And it contains a confession that has not yet been spoken. But now we come to the part that changes everything. The sinful truth is not merely that your soulmate hurt you. It is that they made a choice they knew would hurt you. There is a difference. A careless mistake can happen without understanding the consequences, but there are moments when the heart whispers, "Don't do this," and the person does it anyway. That is the moment they remember. That is the moment they have tried to bury. And that is why their conscience has never completely released them. Perhaps someone pressured them. Perhaps they were afraid of losing approval. Perhaps they were protecting an image. Perhaps they believed another person's warning. Perhaps they were manipulated themselves. But at the final moment, the choice still belonged to them, and they know it. That is what makes the secret so painful. Because they cannot honestly say they had no part in what happened. They had a choice, and they made it. Sitting alone after everyone else has gone to sleep, the world is quiet, their phone is beside them, your name may not even be on the screen, but the memory of you is there. They think about contacting you. They type something. They erase it. They type again. They stop. Because what could they possibly say? Hello would be a lie. I miss you would be incomplete. I'm sorry would not explain everything, and can we talk? Would require them to eventually tell you what they have spent so long hiding. So they put the phone down. Again, and another night passes. This is how secrets survive, not because they are impossible to reveal. Because people keep postponing the moment of truth, but postponement has an expiration date. There comes a point when a person becomes more exhausted by hiding than they would be by confessing, and I believe that point is approaching in this story. Something has shifted inside your soulmate. They are beginning to understand that silence did not protect you. It did not protect them. It did not heal the situation. It simply allowed the wound to remain open, and now the wound is demanding attention. There is another person connected to this secret, someone who knows what your soulmate did. Someone who may have witnessed the decision, someone who may have advised them, someone who may even have helped create the circumstances that led to it. This person has their own reason for remaining silent, and your soulmate knows that. That is why the truth has become complicated, because if your soulmate confesses, another person's involvement may be exposed, and if that happens, the entire story changes. Suddenly, your soulmate is not the only person who must answer questions. The family dynamic changes. Old loyalties are tested. People begin asking who knew what, who said what, who remained silent, who benefited from the separation, and who allowed you to believe a story that was never complete. This is why your soulmate may be terrified of confession. They are not only afraid of losing you, they are afraid of exposing everyone who participated in the silence. And yet, there is something about truth that people forget. Truth has momentum. Once one person speaks, another becomes braver. Once one secret is exposed, another secret becomes harder to protect. Once one person says, "That isn't what happened," everyone who knows the real story suddenly becomes uncomfortable. And that is exactly what begins to happen here. One person speaks, another becomes silent. Someone changes their expression, someone asks a question. Your soulmate realizes that the secret is no longer safe. Then comes the moment they have dreaded. Someone asks them directly, "Why did you do it?" And for the first time, there is no easy answer. No excuse, no distraction. No story prepared in advance, only the truth. Your soulmate looks down, their voice becomes quieter, and they finally admit that there was a moment when they could have chosen differently. They could have defended you. They could have told you what they knew. They could have trusted the connection. They could have refused the pressure. They could have stopped the separation, but they didn't, and that is when they realized the most painful truth of all. They did not merely lose their soulmate, they participated in the loss. That realization can break even the strongest person, but broken does not have to mean destroyed. Sometimes being broken open is how a person finally becomes honest. Sometimes the collapse of pride is the beginning of repentance. Sometimes the person who spent years hiding finally discovers that the only path toward peace is through the truth they feared, and that may be where your soulmate is standing now, at the edge, not yet ready to jump, not yet ready to confess everything, but no longer able to pretend there is nothing behind them. My beloved child, do not make the mistake of thinking this revelation means you should wait indefinitely. You are not being asked to put your life on hold. You are not being asked to chase someone else's healing. You are not being asked to rescue your soulmate from their consequences. Their truth is their responsibility. Your healing is yours. If they confess, let them confess. If they apologize, let the apology prove itself through actions. If they return, let their return come with honesty. Do not accept half-truths simply because you have been hungry for answers. You deserve the whole story. And there is a reason I keep emphasizing that, because the secret your soulmate is hiding is not the entire secret. There is another piece, a missing piece. A piece they have never told anyone, not their family, not their closest friend, not even the person who may have helped them make the decision. They have kept this one detail completely to themselves. And that detail explains why they became so distant afterward. It explains why they could not look at you the same way. It explains why they sometimes appeared devastated when they heard your name. it explains why they may have tried to convince themselves that losing you was necessary, because after they made the decision, something happened, something they never expected. They saw the consequence, not in theory, not as a possibility. They saw it, and in that instant, they realized they had made a terrible mistake, but by then, the damage had already begun. The bridge between you had started burning, and instead of running back to put out the fire, your soulmate stood there frozen, ashamed, afraid, watching, and that is the part they would rather die than admit, not that they literally killed you, but that they believe they killed something inside you that once trusted them completely. They believe they killed the version of your heart that would have welcomed them without hesitation. They believe they killed the future they secretly wanted, and now they are terrified that even if they return, you will never again be the person who once loved them without fear. That is the secret beneath their silence. But there is one final question. What exactly did they do? What was the decision? Who influenced them? What did they hide from you? And why did they believe they had no choice? Because the answer is connected to a moment when your soulmate received a message that changed everything. A message they never showed you, a message they kept hidden, a message that contained a claim about you, and for years, they believed that claim was true, until recently, until someone found the original message, and when your soulmate finally saw it again, they noticed something they had completely missed the first time. One line, one tiny detail, one detail that proved the story they had believed was never the full truth. And when they realized who had written that line, their entire expression changed, because it was not the person they expected. It was someone much closer, someone whose name they had never allowed themselves to question, and that is where the secret becomes deeper than your soulmate's guilt. Because now they have to face two truths at once: what they did to you, and who helped them do it. And my beloved child, they have finally found the courage to ask that person one question. The answer is the part that could change everything.